Welcome to Lesson 1's overview for professional writing. Before you watch this presentation, please read Chapter 1 in your textbook entitled Writing in Your Career on pages 1 to 34. You did that? Good. Let's get started. In the overview presentation, I stressed the importance of good writing skills in your professional life. After watching that presentation and reading the textbook, you should be aware that writing is a pretty important part of most, if not all, jobs you will encounter. As mentioned, writing can take many forms. Formal documents like reports, proposals, and presentations are the kind of products that come to mind when we think of professional writing, but more commonly, less formal writing like email, letters, and even status reports can be just, if not more, important. One of the most important concepts to keep in mind when you are writing anything, from everyday emails to 50-page reports, is your audience. Unlike some writing you do for school or for yourself, you will always have an audience for professional writing. Someone is going to read it, which means you should constantly think about that person or people while you're producing your documents. And because technology has made our world a global community, the audience very often may be an international one. As a result, for any document you produce, you must have global sensitivity when writing. This means using international English, examples on page 4 in the text, being aware of diversity, and being aware of different cultural morals and values. Of course, you're not always going to know everything about every culture that may come across your documents, but keeping the major players in mind is important. If you know for certain there are international components to your audience, do some research on the web or by talking to people to make sure you understand the expectations and conventions unique to that culture. For example, I used to work in an IT department in an international company, and we started working directly with some colleagues in France. It wasn't too long before we got the impression they didn't like us much, but we couldn't figure out why. After a bit of asking around to other people who had also worked with that office, we discovered that the French have a certain perception of how email is written. Unlike the typical American business email that gets right to the point, the French like some small talk at the beginning of their email that asks them how they are and eases them into the conversation. Once my colleagues and I started incorporating that into our emails, the French warmed up quickly to us. In short, knowing your audience is important. In addition to knowing your audience, effective writing depends on a carefully constructed, thoughtful process to document generation. Before you even start writing, you should understand not only your audience, but also your purpose. If you don't fully understand your purpose, some pre-writing activities or research may help you figure it out. Similarly, don't be afraid to use writing as a tool for idea generation. All writing is rewriting, which means that oftentimes the first draft of a document is far from what the end result will look like. You may have learned in earlier composition classes that writing is a process and is often messy. Professional writing is no different. And the stakes are often higher because more is writing on the outcome than just a grade. You may have already figured this out from writing in your major classes, but it does bear repeating. Writing you will do for work is very different than writing you have done for school. While writing in the academic world often means pleasing an instructor, professional writing is more about making sure you get your points across effectively, being accurate with data and numbers, being visual when necessary, and effectively persuading the reader when the need arises. Audiences for professional writing are not usually concerned with your impression or feelings. It's not a place to editorialize or give your unsolicited opinions. Sometimes you will be asked to offer recommendations, as with proposals that persuade the audience to do something, or a study that is supposed to offer the best solution to a problem, but these recommendations should never be based on personal feelings. They should always be data and example driven, and you should be able to back up your recommendations with researched concrete support. If you don't think your personality or personal choices come into play in professional writing, you'd be wrong. Being ethical, accurate, fair, and honest are all necessary not only in a professional writing environment, but also a professional environment in general. And your ethics wholly depend on you as a person. We already talked about plagiarism as a form of unethical behavior in the professional world, but ethics also extends to being honest with your writing. For example, don't lie on a resume. Being accurate and not misrepresenting data or other statistics. Respecting your coworkers and managers, and following company rules and guidelines. In addition, companies can monitor your electronic activity. They can look at your cell phone records if they pay for your service. They can look at your company email and computer and monitor your web usage. Don't do anything you wouldn't want your company to see you do. I have a friend whose husband works at a place that has a lot of unethical misconduct lately, and just about everyone in the office has been subject to scrutiny. Even though he's done nothing wrong and wasn't involved in the scandal there, investigators are still pulling his cell phone records, email history, and asking him questions to try to find out all they can about the incidents. He is lucky because he doesn't have anything to worry about. Make sure you never have anything to worry about either. Going back to the idea of ethics in writing, there are some specific guidelines you can follow to ensure your writing is ethical and above board. Make sure you don't use misleading visuals, don't misquote or use quotes in a misleading way, don't omit key information for decision making, and don't skew data. There is a fine line between being persuasive and effectively supporting points and trying to purposely mislead your audience by manipulating them through writing. Make sure you stay on the right side of that line. In summation, there are a few key ideas I'd like you to take away from this presentation. Number one, always keep your audience in mind when engaging in professional writing. Number two, treat professional writing as a process and realize that early drafts of documents are often ways to discover ideas and purpose. And number three, be ethical in not only your writing, but your business conduct as well. Now that we've discussed these points, let's move on to your assignments for the week. First, you'll need to engage in your third forum discussion for this unit. Again, you will do this in your small groups. Every person needs to find an example from the internet about some instance of unethical business dealings and post it to your group. Then amongst your group, discuss why those dealings were unethical and what could have been done instead that would have been more ethical. Also discuss what you think the company should do or should have done as a response. This forum discussion is due by Wednesday, February 3rd at 11 o'clock p.m. Lastly, you must complete the Lesson 1 quiz on the tests and quizzes pages by Friday, February 5th at 11 o'clock p.m. Thanks for listening and have a good week. These are the citations from this presentation.